Okay, so it's the 1950s. It's during President Ike Eisenhower's term. And there's a senator from Wisconsin. His name is Joe McCarthy. And if you are familiar with any of history, you are aware that Joe McCarthy is the person that McCarthyism is coined after, okay? And McCarthyism is most notably defined as an attack on left-winged politicians within the U.S. government without care for evidence supporting, said prosecutorial accusations, right? But I want to be able to give you some background. So during the 1950s, there was a lot of hoopla about communism and communists, right? And so it was with cause, right? Because during that time, you had the Rosenbergs who were found guilty of stealing plans for the atomic bomb and sharing them. All right. And so during this time, you had a lot of politicians that were telling the American public in various modes and ways and means that, hey, communism is running amok. Okay, you should be afraid. You should fear communism. And basically what Joe McCarthy did is Joe McCarthy did this and then turn it up a notch. Okay. So Joe McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin. That should really be all you need to know, but I'll go further. And he was also on the subcommittee of investigations within the Senate. Okay. And so what Joe McCarthy began to do is he began this fear mongering, right? Where he started to target specifically left-wing people, accusing them of not being loyal to the United States of America. Why was this working? Once again, you already had two people that had stolen plans about the atomic bomb and had shared them. Okay. So people were a little bit leery. Why? Because he had political currency, right? He wasn't proven to be some type of fear-mongering person that you shouldn't believe, at least not as of yet. And as a result, he started targeting people, doing these investigations, started saying that that whoever people feel may be a part of the communist movement or the Communist Party, that their name should be put on a list. And that list should be given to our agencies, FBI, CIA, and the FBI, the CIA, and all investigatory agencies should begin to look deeply into them. Because communism. Now, the thing about it is that he wasn't the only one. However, he was the one that took it to the extreme, right? Not only that, he also weaponized the truth. And that truth is that there were some communist spies that were found and they did do a thing. Okay, but from that fear mongering, he began to intimidate people. He began to have these hearings. He began to drag people in and force people to be witnesses and strong arm them into doing a whole lot of stuff. Meanwhile, you have those that are in politics, those that are in Washington, that's looking at Eisenhower like, bro, what are you doing? How come you're not corralling this man? And Eisenhower was a Republican just like Joe McCarthy was a Republican. And so Eisenhower is trying to find a way to keep the Republican Party held together so that they can push the policies that they're supposed to be pushing. Eisenhower had a plan. And what Eisenhower decided to do was he said, I'm not about to get into the gutter with this Joe McCarthy. I'm not about to do that. Okay, I'm not about to attack him. Now, the thing about it is this. Eisenhower did try to outdo Joe with trying to be hard on communism and those that may be a part of the communist movement. How did he do that? Well, those two people that stole the plans, yeah, he made sure that they were no clemency, ain't think about it, ain't thought about it. Soon as they found that they were guilty, he essentially moved on with his life and let them go ahead and go with God, quite literally, okay? But things were starting to get out of control. Eisenhower couldn't begin to show himself as someone who was weak because he is the commander-in-chief. And in a previous video, I told you guys that the executive branch, Its power is literally charisma. The ability to do a thing, the ability to influence a thing, public opinion, etc. That is how the executive moves policies, not particularly by executive order like what's happening now, okay? That's not how that goes, all right? And back in those days, it was very, very important for you to be able to get the buy-in of the American people. So what did Eisenhower do? Well, in the background, because of the fact that you had McCarthy, who was literally targeting White House people. I don't want you to think that these were just everyday people outside. Like, no. McCarthy was like, there's communists in the White House. There's communists in the Army. There's communists in the State Department. There's communists. So he was attacking fellow colleagues with no evidence. That was the crazy part, right? There was no evidence, dragging them and subpoenaing them into having to sit through these investigations in the Senate. And at minimum, even if you are proven to be innocent, your reputation is still smeared. So Eisenhower, he's like, listen, homeboy has an attorney that he likes to work with. Last name Cohen, C-O-H-N, Cohen. He's like, I need some dirt. I need some background. I need a dossier. Quick, tell me about this man, okay? What ends up happening is that they release this dossier. They find out some information that is damning to the reputation of Cohen, and therefore damning to the reputation of McCarthy, right? What ends up happening is that McCarthy, that political influence that he had, he no longer has, okay? Investigations stop, right? And the reason why investigations stop is because Eisenhower did something that a lot of people really didn't do during that time. It wasn't used as broadly as it is today. And that is the use of his executive power. And what he did is he said, any White House person, any person that is within my house, you cannot participate in these investigations. You cannot give any documents. You cannot say anything about anything that's going on inside of this White House, even if it is in the benefit of whomever's outcome. I don't care who benefits from it. You will now be silenced. You can't say anything. And because they couldn't say anything, you had McCarthy that no longer had witnesses, right? And the reason why Eisenhower decided to use this extreme was because of the fact that he felt that their conversations and their ability to do work should be private. They should be able to carry out the duties that they are asked to carry out without being afraid of the possibility of scrutiny in the Senate without just cause. That is something that I want you to understand. This is all being done without evidence and without just cause. Okay? Fast forward, after all of these things have been found out, McCarthy is no longer as influential inside of the government and in the Senate. 3 years later, he is found no longer on the earthly plane. Okay. That was during the 1950s. And the hunting of communists and things like that, that stuff was going on well into the 1970s, right? Because you have Angela Davis. Angela Davis, yes. Angela Davis was prosecuted for being a communist, right? So there is 20 years between. She was found not guilty in 76, I believe, right? But why is this important? Well, the current commander-in-chief was born in the 1940s. There is something to be said about the era and the climate by which people are born and raised in. And so when I tell you that we have seen this before, the fear-mongering, the attacking of people in government and outside of government without just cause, without evidence, prosecutions that are happening that are unjust, I want you to know that we have already seen it before. And because we've seen it before, we know how to stop it. Now, during the time that Eisenhower was doing his thing, people thought that he wasn't doing a thing. People thought that he was chumping out. People thought that he wasn't trying to corral his fellow Republican. But he was working behind closed doors. And I believe that that's what a lot of people in government are currently having to do.